Welcome to the Family Movie Night podcast, everybody. This is episode 11. We are glad to have you guys joining in. As always, I have my wonderful co-host joining in with us. Let's just start from the top with the greatest dad to ever take his kids on a road trip that turned into a robot apocalypse, Mr. Donnie Dorsey himself. Donnie, how are you doing today?
I'm not crying. You're crying.
I know. This is a tough movie. Hey, in honor of Mitchell's versus the Machines, which is the movie we are discussing today, Donnie, I want to know what device in your home are you most terrified will become sentient and try and destroy the entire human race?
Oh, clearly the microwave. Absolutely the microwave.
That would be tough.
Why. Let me explain why. So the microwave not only has a door that can slam on your head, it also can heat up at the same time. So like it can warm your brain while like popping you in the head. And I'm like, I got no time for that. So, every so often I just stop and clear out the time. I don't want it to have any options.
I like that. I think you're preparing yourself well for the impending robot apocalypse. Next up, we have joining us finally as a full-time host, Miss Heidi Cooper, who, let's just be honest, is the dad in this film who doesn't understand any technology. Just before we started filming, we were trying to help her figure out how to pull up her script. Heidi, how are you doing?
I'm good. Confused, but good.
This movie probably hit home for you in lots of different ways.
Yeah, a lot.
All right, so same question to you. If you had a device in your home that turned sentient and wanted to kill you, what would be the worst option?
Siri, totally. Because she knows how to really break me down.
Emotional damage.
So very good. All right, Heidi, good to have you. And of course, the villain of our podcast, which is either the just horribly negligent tech company that created this device, or you have to be Pal herself, Olivia Colman, wanting to be just very offended, destroying humanity. Sawyer Hewlett, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm okay being the Eric Andre version of Mark Zuckerberg, for what it's worth, rather than Olivia Colman's AI system. But
I agree. Anyone would just like to be the Eric Andre version of anything. So
exactly.
I'm all good for that. All right, Sawyer, same question to you. If you had a device in your home that was going to try and kill you, what would you want it not to be?
Yeah, I think for me, it's a pretty easy no-brainer that the blender would be deadly if it ever decided to wake up. And so that thing, I get squirmy just thinking about that thing.
Absolutely. And for me, of course, it would be my stand mixer, because I use it probably more than any appliance in my home. And I would just be so personally offended and hurt that it turned on me in such a way. So I would be very upset at that point. But if you don't know why we're talking about this, it is because we are discussing the film The Mitchells versus the Machines, which is available on Netflix, which is about a quirky, dysfunctional family's road trip that is upended when they find themselves in the middle of the robot apocalypse and suddenly become humanity's unlikeliest last hope. But before we get into that, we got to get to the theme song. Let's roll it up. All right. Well, this is the Family Movie Night podcast, where we want to help your family have better conversations around the content that you consume. But that's not really all we do. So, Donnie, why don't you tell everybody what we do on this podcast?
Yeah. So on this podcast, we encourage every family at Community Christian Church to have a monthly movie night to help you and your children build memories, start conversations that matter. The goal of our family ministry is to help you raise your children to love Jesus and his way of life above all other things. And we know that critical to that is for you to have a routine of regular times of connection and shared experiences that help you build stronger relationships.
That's you, Heidi.
I had my mic off.
Just going straight with our theme of Heidi not understanding technology. She was
just
on
keep
mute.
that in there and it'll validate everything you said.
That's very good. Well, why don't you just pick it up from there, Heidi?
And movie nights are a great opportunity to do that because movies are not only an easy way to share laughter and joy together, and even fear and sadness in a safe environment, but they also give us a chance to talk about what matters most to us in a way that's meaningful and memorable with our children. And on this podcast, we want not only to recommend some movies that you can watch on your monthly movie night, but give you some ideas of meaningful conversation that you can have with your children during and after the movie time.
And we want to remind you to like this video and subscribe to our channel on YouTube and follow us on Facebook. And also, if you're a parent who calls Community Christian your home, we have a lot more helpful content to you available on our parent Facebook group. All you have to do is go to our main Facebook page and click on the tab that says Groups, and you'll find the Community Kids Parent Group. If you click the Join Group button, you'll get regular updates about events that your family around events for your family around our church, as well as articles, videos, and content that will help encourage and inspire you as a parent as you raise your children to love Jesus. We would love to see you over there.
And as always, really, the point of this podcast is not to add another thing to your list of things that you as a parent feel guilty about not doing. The goal of this is we really do want to make it easier for you and your kids to enjoy being together so you can build memories and have conversations that matter. So throughout our conversation today, remember, we want to have fun and help you think through simple and easy ways to share your love of Jesus with your kids. And I really do think this movie, one, not only will help you do that, but I bet this is a movie most people, one, haven't seen, two, didn't even know existed on Netflix, because the way Netflix algorithm works is if you did not see it on April 30th, 2021, when it came out, you didn't see it ever again. It got buried in the feed. So my guess is, I don't know, had you guys seen this movie before? Donnie, had you watched this one yet?
No, I didn't even know it existed.
Yeah. Heidi, I don't think you had seen it either.
No, same.
Yeah. Sawyer?
Yeah, I knew it existed, but I didn't see it until it ended like 45 minutes ago.
This is a fresh, these are Sawyer's hot takes. So let's just go right to you, Sawyer. Not talking about themes. We're just trying to recommend a good, fun movie for parents. Is this just a good, fun movie for parents?
Absolutely. This and not just for
what? I loved your dramatic pause, which I know I could see that you were pausing for dramatic effect, but because of the way Google Meet does this, it's just going to be on my face. So I'm going to ask you a question. It's just going to be blank on me. So I like that. Go ahead. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I love this movie very much. It is like another one of those movies that I think is going to be great for all ages. I think even teenagers can find a lot to enjoy about this movie.
Yes.
Maybe my favorite aspect about this movie is the irreverent humor. It's not like inappropriate or anything like that, but the movie knows not to take itself too seriously. That doesn't mean that it's always a joke, because I'm sure that we'll get into later, there's a lot of very serious moments, but the movie also knows that it is here to be a movie for kids. And so in doing so, it is extremely funny. It is one of the funniest animated movies I've seen in a long, long time. And
to your point, Sawyer, about it not being inappropriate but being good for all ages, this is done. It is produced. Let me say this: it is directed by Michael Rianda, who worked on Gravity Falls, which is a great Disney XD show. It's like preteen kind of age show that my kids love. And also Jeff Rowe co-directed this. But it is produced primarily, probably the name most people would maybe know, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who are the production team behind Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which is another PG movie that teenagers love just as much as young kids.
Yeah, as well as the Lego movies they also do. And I also love those. Like literally, Lord and Miller, everything they touch is gold to me.
Well, let's be honest. The first thing they ever did was the Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs movie, which is absolutely hilarious. The first time I saw it, I think my wife and I had just gotten married, and one of the opening jokes is he's an inventor and he came up with spray-on shoes. but the shoes can't ever come off your feet. And the joke they wrote in the movie was he goes, because he's a little kid, everyone bullies him, and he's like, and I tried to run away, but you can't run away from your own feet. And from that point, I decided this is the greatest team that has ever made anything. So this movie is really, really fun, like Sawyer said. The thing I think that's best about this movie, if you're just talking about the funny, fun aspects of it, is the way that it accepts internet meme culture as a thing that most movies currently don't do. There's a recurring joke that begins at the beginning where they pull up this meme. She says the way her dad screams is like this screaming monkey meme, and they overlace them on top of each other. And not just that, but like the way that you have these kind of explosive, dynamic animation meme type things that kind of they overlay on top of the animation. It's remarkable to me how kinetic it is. Like, it's very exciting. It's very energetic. I just think my kids and I watched it, I think, on the day it became available on Netflix. And I didn't remember a lot of it until I watched it. I remembered I enjoyed it, but when I watched it this time, I loved it. It just is one of my favorite movies of this year. So Donnie, what about you? Go ahead, Heidi. Go ahead.
I think one thing too is that with all of that, because my kids are 6 and 2, almost 3, and we watched it together, and they wanted to watch it again a couple of days later. They want to watch it again since then, and they kept on talking about all the funny parts, but they would normally be scared about some of the things, 3 years old, some of the robots and things like that. But that overlay that you were talking about of like the cartoon, possums and the cartoon, dog pigs and stuff, that just kept it really light and really funny the whole time. So I think that was really cool too.
Well, and I think for young kids, like my kids, also same way. I have a 5, 6, 7, and 10-year-old now, and they are. It really, and I'll say this: all 3, if not 4, of my kids have ADHD, and so it really fits like the way their brains work. Is like there's something changing every second, and it really just captures their attention, and it's a lot of fun. Now, this movie also hits you. So if parents kind of think this sounds annoying, I'll say this. I know this movie hits Heidi in other ways too, very emotionally, because not only do you have a 6 and an almost 3-year-old, but you have a 19-year-old.
Yeah, almost 19.
Almost 19, who is now out of the home and that, all of that. So I'm sure this movie was emotional for you as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was thinking back about we just took a little trip to Myrtle Beach for Christmas, and it kind of felt like we were in a zombie apocalypse. I've never been to Myrtle Beach before, but I'm sorry to people who like it, but it was definitely that feel for me. And so I was enjoying our little comparisons between that and Myrtle Beach.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think this movie's really relatable. That's one thing I love about the animation, is not just kind of the wackiness of it, but the animation style itself, very much like Lego Movie or Into the Spider-Verse. It's a very unique. It doesn't look like the Pixar movies. Everyone's trying to look like the Pixar movies. This thing, it looks like it is trying to go as far from it. There are elements of it that the animation looked insanely realistic. Like I thought I was looking at a person's face, but then it would transform to like the screaming monkey, and you're like, okay, that's not it. So I just think it's a movie that feels real while at the same time feeling completely surreal. And I think that blending really works. Donnie, how did this movie work for you?
I loved it. I thought every aspect of it, like, it takes you on a journey. Like, I like movies that don't just leave you at one spot. They constantly make you think about what's happening and like slowly progresses the storyline. And it does a really good job of that. The animation is so much fun to watch. Like, every aspect of it just like keeps you engaged. Kind of like what you're saying is like, it changes constantly, but it changes to keep your attention, but also changes enough to let you know something else is happening. And so so it keeps you totally engaged. I loved it.
Well, and I think what you're talking about there, Donnie, and this will be kind of our segue, but I think it kind of gets to the thematics of what the movie's about, which is, and I felt this in the movie. The movie kind of uses technology in an interesting way, which we don't have time on this podcast to get into. But one of the things in the animation style does this is it's kind of this blending of, I've never seen animation that works this kinetic and so much feels like it's of this moment. But the themes of the movie are so timeless in that it's just about a family learning how to grow and change and accept each other as we grow and change and communicate about the things that grow and change. And, I think all of these different kind of things, that the animation fits that for me because this is part of the plot of the movie, but she's a filmmaker. The reason they're on this road trip is she just got into film school across the country. She's trying to go, and her films are these quirky, insane, frenetic, like it's just nuts. And the dad doesn't get it. And so let's get into the part where we've just talked about, we all agree this is a movie that'll just build good memories with your kids. And one of the things it does is, as Heidi said, like, I now get to have these kind of inside jokes with my kids. Like they reference something, I get it. And I'll just say, as a parent who was also a youth minister and knows that as my kids get older, your ability to understand what jokes they're making, you lose it pretty quick. That's pretty great for you as a family to be able to hey, we all kind of share this thing together. But this is a movie that also has some great conversations that matter too. And so let's get into really kind of the big theme of this movie, which is it's really just a movie about a family. And, the way that the IMDb puts it is a quirky, dysfunctional family. And I think that's kind of the pull of the movie is this family dysfunctional? Are they determined to be dysfunctional? Because every character in the movie, I should say in the family, right? You've got the dad who he's kind of got some dreams and ideas that he wants to see for his relationship with his daughter. His daughter has some dreams and ideas, which are basically, I want to get away from this family. They don't understand me. I want to get around some people who do understand me, right? You've got this boy, the younger boy, who's really, all he can talk about is dinosaurs, which anyone who's ever had a kid obsessed with anything can relate to, right? This is the only thing he can get to. And he just wants everyone to be happy. And then you've got this mom who is comparing her family that she kind of thinks of as dysfunctional to what she thinks of as like the pristine, perfect, functional family that then we get to kind of see grow and change too. So the movie's kind of about what does it take for a family to function healthily, right? I mean, am I off on this? I know we talked a little bit about this. Sawyer, what was you kind of brought up the way that this movie treats the parents and the kids that is very helpful. I think that's a good place for us to start.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing that this movie gets right in terms of its like big themes and ideas that it wants to communicate is that when it comes to a family unit, there's not heroes and villains. There's not good guys and bad guys. There's one perspective, and then there's a different perspective is the thing. And the movie, I don't want to give too much away, but the movie does such a great job at driving home with the daughter, and I can't believe I'm forgetting her name right now, but it does such a good job of driving home
Katie.
Does a great job of driving home her kind of family dilemma, how she wants something, and in particular, her dad might not want that thing. Okay. And as it goes along the journey of the movie, you begin to understand why the dad is that way. And so you begin to actually sympathize with him and her as a thing. And it's this really great tightrope walk that the movie walks it never gets cheesy, if I'm being honest. And that's kind of where there's one moment in the movie where I was like, oh boy, this is getting real, like close to being cheesy. And it never did. It was very, in a movie that embraces schlock and surrealism so much, it is very honest about family relationship difficulties sometimes.
Well, and I think the point that you're talking about, I think this is huge, Donnie, and I think that's important. I'm Donnie, sorry, Sawyer, that I'm reading Donnie's name right above your head. And I'm just always thinking about Donnie. But the thing that you said, I think it's huge for parents to be able to talk about is that there are no villains in our family. And at times it can feel that way. It can feel like mom and dad are villains, and moms and dads have a hard time admitting this. Sometimes it feels like your kids are the villain and that it's mom and dad against the kids, and that's not really what we do as a family. And the movie obviously really does that, because the beginning of the movie is Dad doesn't want daughter to leave. Daughter can't wait to get away. They go on this trip, and her whole thought is the worst thing that could ever happen to my life is that I have to go on this road trip with my dad and spend more time with my dad. And then literally the worst thing that could happen, a robot apocalypse happens, and it has to bring the family together. But in this, what I think is interesting, maybe we can talk a little bit about this, is that it doesn't bring the family together. It sort of does at first, and you think they're kind of moving that way, but it becomes clear that they don't know how to communicate to each other, right? They have these communication problems. The daughter, at a very key moment, basically just says to her brother, she doesn't realize she's being videotaped, but says to her brother, like, I don't mean any of the stuff I'm saying to dad. I can't wait to get away from him as soon as I can. And the dad is not really listening to his daughter. At one point, she has to say multiple points, you're not listening to me. There's a hilarious couple sequences where the brother and the mom are writing out specific words for the daughter to say to the dad and the dad to say back. And they're like reading these cue cards. Very funny. Donnie, Heidi, either one of y'all got something to say about the kind of the way this movie approaches communication issues in a family?
So I think for me, there were so many times when my teenager was at home where I would say something, and then my husband would turn to him and say, "What she's saying is," it was almost like we were speaking two different languages most of the time. And so it's just perspective and differences in, how we're hardwired and things like that. But yeah, I saw that a lot in there, and it's like, you're listening, but you're not hearing. And I think so much of, my thing that I saw a lot throughout the movie was resonated with the dad was, he was afraid. He was afraid of losing his relationship with his daughter. He was afraid of things changing for their family. He had made a lot of changes to be a family. And then that was kind of all like coming to an end, so to speak, because she was moving away. And so I think that kind of hit home for me with my baby that just moved out. And it helped me to see, kind of like that, how we let fear control us in relationships. So I think that was kind of the thing that stuck out to me the most about their communication and the dynamic in their relationship that really needed a lot of work.
Well, and I think, Heidi, I know just because we've been friends for so long, and I know this is true for Donnie too, because he and I have talked about this for so long. There's a great resource for parents called, well, there's really two. One's called I Heard This, You Said That, or it's the opposite. I heard that, you said this, one of those. But there's also, and Donnie, I don't think I've actually told you this yet, but I showed it to Heidi. There's a version of it. It's called like A Parent's Guide to Their Kids' Wiring. And it's like a parental version of this temperaments thing where there's these everyone's one of these four colors: red, yellow, blue, green. And every person hears things in one way and they say things in one way. And if you're a red and I'm a green and we're communicating and you're trying to say I love you, but you're saying it in a way that sounds like I'm frustrated with you, it doesn't matter that you were saying I love you. The way you said it, what I heard was it. And I think for parents, that ends up being a thing. And Donnie, I know the first time I introduced it to you, like 1 week later, I came back and Donnie's like, I've watched all the videos. Donnie had like all this information I did not have about it. So Donnie, I know that's a big thing for you and been helpful for you and your family.
Yeah, I mean, because the biggest part about that I've learned as a parent, and like things that I don't think my parents like fully understood, was the fact that most of our communication is done in the way that we best understand it and how we want to hear it, and not from the perspective of the person that's talking to us or that we're trying to communicate to. Like you may say, "Hey, I gave you hugs and I spent time with you. Why is that not enough?" And they're like, "I don't care about that. I care about you reminding me that you're happy and you're proud of me and all these things, these words of affirmation." And it's so critical to like understanding the different perspectives. And I learned that with my kids. And I find myself like, even during times of correction, like when I'm correcting something they do, normally I might respond like I'm mad. But also I'm starting to look and going, okay, what was happening in that moment? How are they understanding that? I think you see that a lot in like Katie's like connection with her dad, is when they're having conversations, because you can tell the difference, because each of them has a different level of connection. Like her and her brother Aaron, like they literally have the super connection. they understand each other. They can use different lingo, different talk, different speak, and like they get each other. The mom is trying her best and she gets it, but she has moments where she's kind of like lost, but she's like, you know what? I'll figure it out. Whereas the dad is like, is this screen on? Like, is this on? Like, are you talking, honey? Like that's what it feels like when they're talking to each other. And so
Yeah.
it never makes that full connection. So I think that's a huge aspect of it that they show in this movie.
Well, and I think the conversation you as the parent get to have here is we may misunderstand each other, but I hope the conversation never stops. And that's the way I try to say it to my kids is like, I may understand, but there does come a point where when we're both and you can't really say this. I should say you can say it to your kids, but it's not helpful to tell your kid like you're arrogant and you're prideful. I know I'm arrogant. And so there are times that I just go, this is too frustrating. I want to be done. But to kind of say to my kid out of this movie, I hope we never get to a point that if I'm saying something that hurts you, will you always tell me? It won't hurt me if you tell me that I'm hurting you with something you know what I mean? Like being able to keep that conversation open. Donnie, what were you going to say?
I mean, absolutely. Because like, I think it's that level of transparency that I don't like. I had it with my parents, but I'm definitely trying to have more of that with my kids.
Yeah.
Because like whether it's, hey, I messed up, or hey, I didn't say that right, or that came out wrong. And I like, and not like, because sometimes people are like, they try to rationalize the way they said, like, well, you made me mad. It's like, no, you didn't. What you did triggered something in me, and I responded the way that I know how to respond, as opposed to your action didn't make me do anything. What it did was it triggered something deep in me that obviously I didn't realize.
Well, and I remember hearing one person say, I think it was Andy Stanley, but I don't want to necessarily. Anyway, it was a person, it was a pastor who said, we often get hung up on, well, I didn't mean to hurt you. But the truth is the damage is done. Drop in another emotional damage here. The emotional damage is done whether I meant it or not. Like if I back into your car on accident, it's not okay for me to come up to you and go, well, I didn't mean to, so I'm not going to pay for that. Yeah. Because the damage is done whether I did it on purpose or not. So if I am hurting you with something I'm saying or doing, I have to take that into it. And let me just say this. As the parent, your kids are going to say things that hurt you. Mm-hmm. That is the nature of it. You as the parent are the one who has the responsibility to go first in the apology. You don't wait till they apologize to you. Their brain is still developing. They are going to say things that are going to hurt you. My kids say things that hurt me all the time, and I cry about it on my own. But they're going to say things, and we as Christ-like parents have to take a step forward.
It's the interesting thing you said about what is it's literally a thing I'm working on specifically with my daughter right now. Because she says, like, she'll be like, well, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean to. I'm like, it's not about that you didn't mean to. When you say I didn't mean to, you're dismissing your responsibility in the situation. Right. You're saying I had nothing to do with it. Yeah. But when you say I'm sorry, you're saying, look, I'm owning my responsibility in this situation. And I'm sorry that my responsibility in it caused this problem. Because that's the response. Like, I mean, I understand it. It's like, well, I didn't mean to, because it's the idea of like, I want to get as far away from getting in trouble. So if I say I didn't mean to, that dismisses me of all guilt. It's like, I'm off the hook. I'm done.
Yeah. Heidi, you were trying to say something. What do you say?
Yeah. So on to piggyback on what you said, Nathan, I think that the thing that I had to realize is like, I used to think that everything that my son did was either to piss me off or to like, like backhanded, like, I'm ignoring you or I'm not, and the thing that I had to realize is like, for him, like, he doesn't think that much about me. He doesn't think, he's not going in the kitchen and putting something in the trash and seeing that it's overflowing and saying, oh yes, I'm going to add one more thing because that's going to be the thing that makes her head just explode, And usually it was the thing that made my head explode. But I had to realize, like you said about the brain development, like I'm the person who is fully developed. I'm the adult in this situation, even though I feel like
Hopefully.
Even though I feel like I'm developing every day.
you are farther along
Jackson
the
and
path.
I were growing up together. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. But yeah, I like to relate it to a hotel, and I say, like, if I wouldn't go check into a hotel that has a sign that says it's opening in May of 2023, and I wouldn't go in and like to a construction site and be like, all right, I want the penthouse suite. Where's the room service? Like, I'm not going to do that because I already know it's under construction and I can't expect that level of service when, and it's kind of a rough example, but I can't expect to have an adult conversation with a child. And sometimes, our kids are so smart and they're so quick to throw back what we say. And it's like, no, they are definitely in control. They are definitely, and they are very much a equal party in this argument. But in all honesty, they're not, and we can't look at them like that.
Well, I want to kind of piggyback off two things you said there. One, I kind of want to just give a helpful resource. I found this over here. It's called I think it's backwards probably on your screens, but it's Kind Words for Kids. And if you go to the website kindwordsarecool.com, that's where you can order the book A Grown-Up's Guide to Kids Wiring. It explains this whole thing. One of the things I think that's very interesting in that book, and it was very helpful to me, is it said most parents think their job is to fix their children. And this movie really hits on that you have this kid, they have these bad behaviors, and my job is to fix these kids. But if we instead say it's my job to be a student of this kid and learn how to love them and lead them towards Jesus, then it's a different deal. And this book is really helpful. I know this probably isn't going to make sense if you don't know what the temperaments are, but if you come back, you'll see them. This has statements that each temperament, red, yellow, green, blue, whatever your kid are, that they need to hear in order to feel valued, loved, and accepted. So I have a yellow, a red, a green, and a blue all in my household. I'm a yellow. My wife's a green. The reds and the blues are hard for us to understand. But for my yellow kid, they're very expressive, and they love to hear fun and words that make them feel attractive and desired and all that kind of stuff. One thing that my kid says is, people just love being around you. You're magnetic. Like, to just give that to my kid, put it in their lunchbox, right? Send them, put it on their pillow. I often we have like little family meetings where we go around and all say one thing we like about each other. And I'll peel these off and I'll write a little note on the back. And then the reds out there who are a little more assertive, and they're natural born leaders, and they're a little more direct. And so for my daughter, who's a red, that makes her sometimes come across very abrasive to certain people. But if you see it where you've got one here where it says, your potential is endless. Like, you have so much potential, you can do so much, and then greens, who are a little bit more, not necessarily sensitive, but they're more people oriented. They very much want things to be chill all the time. This one right here says, you stay chill even when things get crazy. And I think that's incredible. And then, the blues, who also they seek safety and all those kind of things. It says, I love seeing what you think up. You're so creative, because they live so much of their life in their mind. And you just think about some of those phrases, had you said them to me as a kid, would be like, whatever, I don't care. But certain of them that when you said them, and I'm sure all of us, as you heard them, you're like, God, I wish someone would say that to me. And in particular, I wish my mom said that about me. I wish because there is, the way I've heard it before, it is ordinary people, words, all words matter, right? We know sticks and stones break our bones, but words hurt even worse than that. It's like, we know that's not true. We know that words matter, but like an ordinary person's words weigh like 50 pounds, and mom's and dad's words weigh 1,000 pounds. It is something about the way God made us. And I think this movie really hits on it, is that there is something about the words we as parents use that they really matter. And it's not okay for us to say, well, they said it, so I said it back. Like, we both said some things. That's not enough, parents. We have to do better. Like, our words weigh more. I get that the kids' words hurt. They don't weigh as much to you as your words weigh to them. And we just have to do better. And this isn't to make you feel guilty. I hope it inspires you. I hope you go to kindwordsarecool.com. But one thing I wanted to piggyback to help kind of get us kind of deeper into this movie is Heidi mentioned two things at the time she talked. One is talking about this communication thing and the way we mishear each other, but also the fear that the dad has. And I had noticed in the movie, did you guys notice how the motivations of the dad and the motivations of Pal, the evil robot, were the exact same? They both heard something and thought, I'm afraid now I've become obsolete. I'm afraid I'm going to get thrown to the wayside. Dad becomes a villain a little bit. The robot certainly becomes a villain because of this fear. And I think the daughter's fear is that he will never see me as an adult. Like he won't let me grow and change. Sawyer, you got something to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're diving right into the very ending, the how the story wraps up, I guess. But like the big moment is kind of when the veil gets pulled away from the dad's eyes is the thing. And the whole time throughout the movie, Katie is either making a movie or trying to get her dad to watch a movie. And the veil comes away from his eyes right as he decides, I'm just going to watch this movie that my daughter made. And that is when that's kind of his triumphant moment in the movie, is he decides, okay, no, she can do this. And he actually now trusts her. And I just thought that the way it handled his maturation throughout the course of the film was just perfect.
Another thing kind of that leans to that is he says to put down your camera and take in the world around you. And she said, this is how I do that. And the thing that kind of like that made me think about is how willing are we as parents to accept the lens through which our kids are looking at things and then help them to clarify reality against their lens. And I think that's really important. And this, he was not open to the lens through which she was looking at all. And then he kind of, turns the corner there at the end.
Yeah. And I think that's all just a huge part of this. Donnie, anything to add about just this concept?
No, I think y'all pretty much wrapped a lot of that really well. I mean, you like hit it on the nail. Like their relationship is his ability to communicate and how similar he was to Pal is key to everything that he does in his interactions with Katie. Yeah. Like it's always him trying to understand it from his perspective and getting upset because it's like that. Well, you don't get me. You don't understand me. It's almost kind of invertly the whole dynamic you think of with kids and adults. It's like the kid understands, but the adult's like, you don't understand me. You're not listening to me. You don't get where I'm coming from. Kind of thing.
Well, and that's the linchpin, right? I mean, that's the final like climax of the movie is when she finally makes it to college. And he says, I'm glad you're here with your people, which is like him accepting that she's found her tribe kind of thing. And she looks at him and says, and I'll say this, I was proud of myself. I didn't cry this whole movie. And then she said, Dad, you are my people. You guys are my people. And I didn't cry. And then I looked at my daughters and I said, I just want y'all to know, you guys are always going to be my people. And I started crying and I could hear them go, okay, thanks, Dad. Like, like, oh, great, Dad's crying again. I'm like, oh, it's just, you guys will always be my people. But I think that like, that isn't that kind of the tension of the movie is the dad's afraid. He's so afraid that she's going to run off to this new life and abandon her.
Yeah.
That he won't let her go. And she is so quick to be like, because I want to differentiate and I almost want to, she is trying to abandon everything. And what I love is the movie does so well, that little moose figurine, or I guess is that a moose or a reindeer?
Yeah,
a moose. That's what I thought. Yeah. And at the beginning of the movie, you see that she's put that in the giveaway pile when she's moving, and the dad is brokenhearted, which all of us as dads. But it's the thing we had this when we brought our oldest daughters into our home for the first time. They came in with some toys, but they didn't have a lot of toys. So we kind of split up our daughters, our biological daughter, Corinne, who was our only daughter at the time. We kind of split up some of her toys. And there was like this one toy that like me and my wife had like this really emotional, like you have this memory. Like I just remember as like, we were at Five Below one day and it was one of those moments that's never happened before. We were getting ready to check out and we turn around and she's hugging this little panda unicorn. She's like 3 years old and she's like looking at me. And it was that moment as a dad where normally I'm like, no, put that back, whatever. But I was like, yes, you can have the panda, And then when when my other daughters moved in and she's kind of picking, okay, well, they can have this toy. She just kind of like mindlessly gave the panda away. And I was like, but don't you remember being in the store? You'll always be my people, just breaking down, so upset. But he's got this emotional connection that she doesn't have with it. But then by the end of the movie, and he's afraid that symbolizes everything, right? She's going to leave and never come back and all this stuff. So that causes him to not listen, to overprotect, to go in. Then she eventually realizes what that moose really symbolizes is her dad's willingness to sacrifice for her. And she decides, no, I'm going to take this with me. And it becomes, I mean, it's just a brilliant storytelling, but I think it's a part for us to have these conversations. Donnie, what were you going to add?
Yeah, like kind of going off that with the moose thing, I think it's that idea of like the unspoken expectations and also just communicating how something actually means to you. Like, I think so many times it's so easy to go, well, you should know how much this means to me. No, tell me why it means so much to you, because if you don't tell me, I don't know. Like, there's a good chance if I'm really good at picking up on it, absolutely. We may have that connection. I may know exactly what it is. But if you tell me like, hey, the reason why I think this is a big deal is because I sacrificed something, and this was just a reminder to me of that it still was worth everything I sacrificed. Whereas for her, she only sees this is a piece of the puzzle. Yeah. And it's almost that idea of like looking at a puzzle piece and not actually seeing the rest of the pieces and going, I don't need this. I don't even have the rest of the puzzle. Like, the reason why is because I didn't tell you.
Well, I think that part right there, Donnie, is huge. That also comes from a book, very fundamental in my growth as an adult, called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. We did a teaching series on it about 4 or 5 years ago. And there's a whole thing about expectations in families, that there are things that have to be, if you're going to hold an expectation and be upset that someone didn't meet it, it has to be like clear, achievable. There's a bunch of them, but some of them it has to be clearly stated and they have to agree to it. If your expectation is going to be, if it's going to be, you're going to come see me at this place and at this time and do this, but I just had an expectation that I never communicated to you. That's not fair to you. And it's not fair. It's not fair for me to hold that over your head. And so I think that's huge, Donnie. Anyone got anything else they want to kind of throw in as we're kind of wrapping up this discussion on all of this? I want to throw in one last thought here that I think is really huge in the theme, because this is really great. Once again, I hope you hear in this conversation the kind of ways that you can have conversation with your kids. I think the big ones to have about communication are just, one, you need to educate yourself a little on how your kids hear things, like be a student of them, pay attention. But a good conversation to have would just be, hey, I want us to be open and to talk. And if I say things that hurt you, I think as parents, to open the door, to say, I'm sorry when I mess up, to tell them, I want you to tell me when I mess up. That's huge. Sawyer, were you going to add something to that?
Yeah. And this is, I don't want to shift the conversation, but just keeping open communication with your kids. This movie talks heavily about technology. It's a very solid meta commentary on social media in particular. And this movie, I think, can open the door for you to have some really fruitful conversations with your kid about that as well. I think this movie actually kind of nails it on the head, where social media is not inherently good or bad. It's how you use it and stuff like that. And making sure that it doesn't rule your kid's life is something that I think you can at least have some conversations about with this movie.
Well, and I think it also gives you an opportunity in this to practice that with your kids. I don't know that we've said this a lot outside the first episode, but and my kids are now at the point, man, I have one daughter, she's my yellow, who likes to get on me. If, Daddy, will you put your phone down so we can watch the movie? And like, she asked me a question that I was looking up, like when I bet, she's like, Daddy, are you going to watch this with us? Or are you going to look at your phone? Like, we've got to, I'm not saying at all times we have to have our phones away, but especially if we're going to do a family game night, if we're going to do a family movie night, if the point of us being together is that we're going to be together, we have to establish that for our kids and not have 10 seconds of uninterrupted eye contact. That was bizarre. But the idea behind that certainly being this gives us a chance to practice that. Here's the final thing I want to kind of hit on that this movie hits on, which I think just helps us to teach our kids to love Jesus and his way of life, which is really the kind of theme at the beginning of this movie is that we are the least likely people to save the world. this family is the least likely people to save the world because they all have their weaknesses, right? The dad doesn't even understand technology, right? The mom is a very timid kind of person who doesn't ever want to speak her mind. By the end of the movie, she's slicing robots in half, right? You have this brother who can't even relate to anyone outside of dinosaurs, but finds a way to really bring that into his saving the world. And then you got this daughter who wants nothing to do with the family, who has to learn how to sacrifice. And it really reminded me of this. There's a line in the movie where we didn't even talk about these two robots who become part of the family, who are just, I mean, come on. Is anyone here?
They're my favorite part.
Yeah, they're the best part of the movie. Best part of the movie. But they at one point they get basically what's effectively CTE, I guess. They get a concussion at one point, and their wiring, they are no longer able to be controlled by the other robots. And at one point, they become very critical in saving the mission. And he says, our malfunction is what saved us. And it really becomes this metaphor for the movie of like the thing that you're so sure because this happened to me, or because I'm wired this way, or because I'm so different than everyone else, God could never use me. That what Paul says in 1 Corinthians is so true, that God intentionally chooses the foolish things of this world so that those who are wise are shamed. That the things that we look at and go, well, that person's the most intelligent, or they have the best ideas, or they're the most talented. Of course, they're the ones running the company. Of course, they're the ones running the world. That God, when he chooses to run the world through the kingdom of God, he chooses the poor and the meek and the humble and the people who have flaws and trauma and all different kinds of stuff. And he says, if you will give me your weakness, I will show up as strong. That God isn't going to make you strong. That's the point. God's going to be strong in your weakness. The goal is that we stay weak and humble on God. Now, that's a pretty heady thing to get into with our kids, but this movie gives us the opportunity just to say that in small ways of, hey, that thing about you that you think is too weird or too ugly or too whatever, God wants to use that. And so that was a good thing. Heidi, were you going to say something?
I think to connect the dots for parents that, we were talking earlier about like, how we use fear to kind of, train them, and we try to get them to be what we don't want, get them away from what we don't want them to be. And, that verse in the Bible that so many people quote, but, misunderstand is train up a child in the way that they should go. And when they're grown, they won't depart from it. But what it actually translates to is train up a child in the way that they're bent. And so, like you were talking about, if we are a student, then we will help them see their strengths and their weaknesses, and we'll help them learn how to turn their weaknesses over to God. And as we're learning that, we have to be modeling that in ourselves. That's the best way to teach them, is to do it within ourselves and live it for them. And so I think that kind of like to connect those two dots for parents, it makes it, even more impactful to look at it from that lens that, if I can help them see that in their weaknesses, God is made strong, like you were talking about Paul saying, that's huge as we're parenting them.
I think that's great. And that's a great place for us to kind of wrap this up, especially because I think we're going to have a very similar conversation about this strengths and weaknesses. Eventually, we're going to talk about the movie Encanto, and that is fully what that movie is about. It's on the opposite side, which is the thing that you're best at actually becomes a problem for you. The thing that you are best wired to do, your strengths can actually be the thing that sabotage your life. You overly rely on your strength. And that God's really, as you said, know my strength so I don't overly rely on it. Mm-hmm. Know my weakness so I can overly rely on God in that. I think that's huge. Two other thoughts just about the movie that have nothing to do with it. One, Furbies are terrifying, and they have always been terrifying.
That scene was awesome. That was like maybe my favorite like action sequence in the entire movie.
Yes, like the dark harvest has begun. Best line of dialogue. I mean, it's just absolutely wonderful. Second thing is this the same plot as Avengers Age of Ultron? It's not just like a robot apocalypse, but it's a robot apocalypse. It's like humanity needs to evolve by dying, and you're weak, and it's like the weaknesses tearing each other apart, and we're going to use that against each other. It's the same plot of Avengers Age of Ultron. And I know some of you think this did it better. You are incorrect. But we will talk about that on a future episode of the Family Movie Night podcast. We are glad to have you guys here. As always, we hope this helps you not only build memories, but start conversations that matter so you can help your children love Jesus and his way of life even more.